terrible. Some of the scholars of tafsir, they mention narrations that one woman, she was so upset that she tried to hit Maryam. She tried to hit Maryam and Allah protected her and her hand became paralyzed. Another woman, she tried to insult her and accuse her of adultery and she became dumbstruck. She could not speak. This is some of the scholars of tafsir, they mentioned these narrations. Then what did they say? They said, Ya ukhta Harun, ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغية. The old sister of Harun. Who was Harun? Who was Harun? Okay, Musa alayhi salam's brother. However, he was not the only Harun. Okay, this is another Harun. We have any Haruns here today? Okay, Keithley are doing not good on names. We need to name more children in Keithley Harun. Okay, this is next performance target. More children called Harun. So the Harun was a pious man. Pious man. Maybe it was her brother. Maybe it was somebody else in the community. So the people, they said to her, "Oh sister of Harun, oh sister of Harun, your mother was, your father was not an evil man, Imran, nor was your mother a loose woman. Nor was your mother a loose woman. So how could you have done this?" It's like when a child does a bad action. You always say, how could you have done this? Your father is such a good person. You come from a good family. How could you have done this? Correct? You know, all the kids are smiling, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, how could you have done this? So they said to her, how could you have done this? Your brother is Harun. Your father is Imran. And your mother is Hannah. How could you have done this? Then what happened is, all she did was, she was fasting and she was not speaking. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She pointed to him. And the people said, قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. They said, how can we speak to a child who is in the cradle? A newly born child, maybe only a few hours old. How can we speak to this child? So Isa alayhi salam, he spoke. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that only 3 spoke in the cradle. And another narration, I believe, only 4 spoke in the cradle. And inshallah we'll cover these stories some other time. However, Isa alayhi salam, he was one of 3 or one of 4 who actually spoke when he was a newly born child. And what did he say? He said the first and the most important thing he said is a refutation and a rebuff of the belief of all the Christians. He said, what did he say? قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. What did he say? He said, I am a slave of Allah. I am a slave of Allah. He did not say he was Allah. Nor did he say he was a son of Allah. Nor did he say his mother was some kind of God. Rather he said, Inni Abdullah. I am the slave of Allah. Imagine this. What kind of introduction did he make? He said, I am the slave of Allah. And then he said, وَآتَانِيَ الْكِتَابِ وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. And then he gave me the book. He gave me the book and he made me a prophet. What book did he receive? Injil, or the Gospels. This is what he received. Meaning that he was going to receive this book. So he said, Ana Abdullah atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. And he made me a prophet. So here we have a very, very clear ayah which we can tell the Christians that Jesus, when he was born, he made it clear cut. When you ask the Christians, where in the Bible, they've taken me back to my dawah table days, where in the Bible did Jesus say he was God? So now the Christian becomes nervous. Well, he was the lost sheep of Israel and he was the Word. I said, yeah, but where did he say he was God? And the answer is nowhere. This is not found anywhere in the Bible, an explicit statement, he was God. So we say that here in the story in the Quran is an explicit statement that he is the servant of God. And he is a prophet of God. And he is a prophet who received revelation. So he defended his mother. This miracle was placed such that he could clear his mother, his pious mother, of doing something which was the furthest thing from her mind. So this is evidence that Isa alayhi salam, he was a prophet of Allah. Most of the prophets of Allah, when did they become a prophet? At what age? 40. Okay, at 40. As many of the ulama, they said the reason for this was at the age of 40 or thereabouts, a man, he understands life. He starts understanding life. He's been through a few bad times and he starts understanding that life, there's more to it. And not only this, but physically, he is at a point of strength. And then after that, it's just downhill. However, the prophets, they received revelation at the age of 40, except whom? Who was a prophet before the age of 40? No prizes for this one. Isa alayhi salam. The evidence is that as soon as he came out of the womb, he said he was a prophet of Allah. So he was a prophet of Allah straight away. And then he carried on. I can imagine this, all the Jews standing there, waiting to lynch Maryam alayhi salam, waiting to lynch her. And then his baby is now giving them a lecture. And his lecture had not finished. He said, وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. He said that he has made me blessed wherever I am. For example, his birth was a blessed birth. He did not scream when he came out of the womb of his mother. And then he reminded them of some of the major worships which are found in the Sharia of all the prophets. Which worship did he mention? Salah. He mentioned the namaz. Anything else he mentioned? And zakat. So we see that the prophets before, they also told their people to fast and to pray and to make the hajj and to pay the zakat. However, the actual specific rules, they differed from nation to nation. The rules differed. The actual how you pray and how you fast and how you give the zakat, this detail is different. However, the basic ibadah of the hajj, the zakat, the siyam and the namaz, this was all present for all the prophets. So he reminded them. And he also reminded them to have high manners. And he said, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And he said, Allah has commanded me to be good to whom? To be good to? To my mother. Yeah, no father here. Good to my mother, and he did not make me an oppressor, nor did he make me arrogant. So from this, some of the ulama, some of the scholars of Islam, they understood that the Jews, they were bad to their parents, and they were oppressors. Okay, no prizes for that one. They were oppressors. And they were not just. They were not just. So Isa alayhi salam, when he came out of the womb, he reminded them that he was the prophet of Allah. Do your namaz, pay your zakat, be good to your parents, and do not be arrogant. So that's like some amazing khutbah. He comes out of the womb of his mother, and he gives an amazing speech, the speech of his life, which Allah Ta'ala has preserved in the Quran. Then he ended the speech by saying, وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وُلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. And he said, may peace be upon me the day I was born, because he had a very peaceful birth, and the day I die. Of course, we know that Isa alayhi salam, as will come, he was raised, and he will come back down, and he will eventually die. وَيَوْمَ يُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. And the day I am raised, meaning raised on the day of judgment. And then Allah Ta'ala, having narrated this story in Surah Maryam, He says, ذَلِكَ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمْ حَوْلَ الْحَقِّ الَّذِي فِيهِ يَمْتَرُونَ. That this is the story of Jesus, son of Mary, the story in which they doubt. So really it's beautiful, especially when you hear some of the qurra, some of the reciters recite Surah Maryam. Very, very moving. Very, very moving. And many of the Christians in the Arab world, when they heard these surahs, they became Muslim. Especially in Egypt, I know this, that the Christians, they're very frightened when the Arabs, they hear the Surah Maryam. Because the story is complete, it does not require much explanation. And many of them, even many of the bishops, there was a scandal in Egypt, many of the bishops, they became some of the highest people in the church, they accepted Islam. They accepted Islam. And this Surah Maryam is one of the most powerful pieces of da'wah for the Christians. Because they can relate to Jesus. They can relate to Jesus and they love Jesus. Or they can carry on loving Jesus, but they need to give him the correct position. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَا تَتْرُونِ كَمَا أَتْرَتِ النَّصَارَى عِيسَى ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. They do not exaggerate in my praise as the Christians exaggerated in the praise of Jesus, son of Mary. How much longer do I have? Okay, a few minutes. Okay, I wanted to mention just a couple of points before we finish. Have you ever come across a Jehovah's Witness who carries with him a magazine called the Watchtower magazine? You seen this before? Sometimes when they see a Muslim in front of them, they sometimes point to what inside the Watchtower. You seen this before? What do they have sometimes in the Watchtower?
Verses from the Quran.
Verses from the Quran. You seen this before? Okay, and verses from Surah Maryam. Verses from Surah Maryam. And really they're quite uneducated in doing this, because if they're using the Quran, what does this mean? If they're using the Quran, it means that they believe in the Quran. They believe in the Quran, in which case they have to believe that they have to be Muslims. So it's like they reject the Quran, but at the same time they try to use the Quran as an evidence. And there are certain ayats from the Quran they use. I'll just mention them very, very briefly. On one of the ayat they use وَمَرْيَمَ ابْنَتَ عِمْرَانَ الَّتِي أَحْصَنَتْ فَرْجَهَا وَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا, that we blew our soul into her womb, our soul. So the Christians, they try to use this, that this means that Jesus is the Son of God. They try to use this as evidence that Jesus is the Son of God. We say no, the meaning of our soul is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created billions of souls. Each of us, we have a soul. And by virtue of having a soul, we have life in our bodies. So when Allah ta'ala mentions in the Quran that He has blown one of the souls into our soul, into Maryam, what is meant here is that one of the souls from the many souls. So He's given life to Maryam. What is not meant here is the soul of Allah. This is not the meaning in this ayah. So this is one of the doubts which these Christians, they try to place in the minds of the Muslims. And look, this ayah proves that Jesus is the Son of God. So first of all, understand this ayah. This ayah means that a soul was blown into Jesus, meaning His soul, just like your soul was blown into you. The second ayah they try to use is the concept is قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله يبشرك بكلمة منه. That, O Maryam, Allah gives you glad tidings of a word from Him. Of a word from Him. Anyone know which word this is? Huh? Kun fayakun. What is meant in this ayah is that the angels give you glad tidings of a word from Him. And the word is be, and it was. Kun fayakun. Kun fayakun. Innama amruhu idha arada shay'an an yaqula lahu kun fayakun. Now whenever Allah wants anything, He says to anything, be, and it is. So this is the meaning. In the Quran, when we say that the angels gave her tidings of a word, what is meant here is the word is be, and it is. And again, the Christians, they try to use this and say that in the Bible we have a verse which says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So they say that we as Christians, we believe that the Word was God, and in the Quran there is mention that Jesus was the Word. Jesus was the Word, so that means He's God. Ta'ala Allahu 'uluwan kabira. Again, I'm just mentioning this such that we are aware that they try to distort some ayat in the Quran, try to convert Muslims. However, they have been very unsuccessful. They've been very, very unsuccessful. Even in the lands they colonized, they found it very, very difficult to convert anybody. Because even Joe Public Muslim, he knows that this is untrue. Okay, so here we have the story of Isa alayhi salam. And our children, we owe it to our children to tell them the real story, because they're really confused at school. They spend 1 month in the year singing hymns and doing all sorts of activities related to the birth of Isa alayhi salam. So we as Muslims, as a community, we need to tell our children that Isa alayhi salam, he's Abdullah, and he is Nabi Allah. Okay, very, very important. He was one of a chain of 124,000 messengers. And he was the messenger that came before our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by 600 years. However, he came only specifically to the children of Israel, while our Prophet came for whom? For the whole of mankind. For the whole of mankind. So we respect all the prophets. He is one of the 5 major prophets, and we respect him, and we love him, and we defend him. So, however, we should know his correct position, that he was one of the Anbiya of Allah, and he was a human being. As Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, مَا الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقًا. That Isa ibn Maryam is none other than a messenger. And other messengers have passed